Hi, y'all. My name is Joseph Burke. I'm currently a PhD student in soil science at Texas A&M University and Texas A&M Agrilife Research in Lubbock. And along with my co-authors, Doctors Katie Lewis, Wayne Keeling, and Paul DeLon, and our research technician, Christopher Kobos, I'm really excited to share with you some of the information we've been looking at, comparing carbon stocks of sandy and clay loam soils in different West Texas cropping systems. Working in Lubbock is a real treat for the specific reason that we can see the impacts of the Dust Bowl. It's one of the most important impacts ecologically that's ever happened in the country, and we can see the remnants of that in our landscapes. So this image on the left was taken as a dust storm was approaching Spearman, Texas, which is about 3 hours north of Lubbock in the Texas Panhandle in 1935. And what's interesting to note is that while we have reduced wind erosion by about 80% on the semi-arid Texas high plains, we still have quite a bit of erosion that's happening even to this day. In the image on the right, we can see Terry County in 2013 as a dust storm is approaching them. And so as an undergrad at Texas Tech and now as a PhD student at Texas A&M, I've really been able to see how these have developed over time, including as recently as 2019 as a dust storm was approaching our research station here in Lubbock. And then finally, just about 2 weeks ago here in Lubbock as a windstorm blew through. And so while we've made significant improvements in reducing wind erosion, we still have issues to this day with wind erosion. And this has promoted strong interest in soil health management practices here in the area. So for the purposes of this presentation, we'll define soil health as the continued capacity of a soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and humans. And specifically, this looks at both the inherent and dynamic soil characteristics associated with biological, physical, and chemical assessments of this soil health. And most of this work has been done by, I'd say, the I states, Iowa, Illinois, and then also regions in the Northeast like Cornell, looking at these different soil health parameters and how they are influenced by cropping systems. But unfortunately, there's been little work done in our area. And so what we want to better understand is how can we regionally calibrate these soil health management practices and specifically understand the influence of soil type and management practice on these soil health parameters in our cropping systems, specifically where it's pretty dry and also pretty windy. And those things kind of limit the development of soil health parameters in our area. And we think that that may be part of the reason why we have limited cover crop adoption in the Southern High Plains. Now, cover crops are one of the best ways to improve your soil health in addition to reduce tillage. So the figure on the left comes from the 2017 Census of Agriculture and really examines, as it's shown here, the different cover crop adoption for the total crop planting area in our region. So in Lubbock, you can see anywhere between 10 and 15% of the total acres are utilizing cover crops. So for a whole region, and we're going to talk about the Southern High Plains, so this includes Oklahoma as well, or parts of Oklahoma, about 7.5% of the area utilizes cover crops in their cropping area. And then according to this survey, it shows about 54% of the area is using reduced tillage. And that number is really anything other than conventional tillage. So we wanted to better understand how our region, where we have these semi-arid sandy soils and some clayier soils, are going to be impacted by these soil health management practices. So specifically, we're going to look at two sites that are within the Texas A&M Agrilife Research System. The first site is at Halfway, Texas, and that soil is a Pullman Clay loam, and that's located about 45 minutes northwest of Lubbock, Texas. And then the other site we're looking at is La Mesa, Texas, at the Ag Care site, and that's the Agricultural Complex for Advanced Research and Extension Systems. And that system there is dominated by the Amarillo Fine Sandy loam. What's interesting about these two areas is we have replicated 3 different cropping systems across both sites. So the first one is a continuous cotton winter fallow system with conventional tillage, and I'll call that a CCCT moving forward. The second one that is replicated at both sites is the continuous cotton system with a cover crop. At halfway, we plant a wheat cover that's terminated, and this has a conservation tillage, which is similar to a strip tillage system. And then in Lamesa, we have a rye cover that's planted into a no tillage cotton system. So again, continuous cotton, but with a cover crop in that winter fallow. And then the third system is split between a cotton wheat fallow or a wheat fallow cotton system. That's replicated between those 3 and 4 wedges. The cotton wheat fallow is going to be cotton that we planted in 2020 into wheat stubble that was planted in 2019. So every other year we get a wheat crop, and every other year we get a cotton crop in that system. Today I'm only going to show results from the first 3 systems and not including that 4th system where we had active wheat growing. What's interesting to note is that these are a randomized complete block design with 3 replications within that wedge, and the plots are 24 rows wide, but the length of those plots is variable based on the width of the wedge in that system. So again, that ag care site in Lamesa, Texas is going to be an Amarillo Fine Sandy Loam. A typical profile is on the right-hand side, showing how deep the profile is as well as the breakdown of those horizons. The topsoil in the Amarillo Fine Sandy Loam is approximately 80% sand with a pH of 7.8, and this is a benchmark soil series with significant or extensive distribution here on the Texas Southern High Plains. The other soil type that we're going to be looking at, which is at the halfway site, is a Pullman Clay loam, and it has in its topsoil much more sand or much more silt and clay compared to that Amarillo series, and its pH is also about a 6.8 compared to that sandy soil. This is also a benchmark soil series with extensive distribution on the high plains. These 2 soil series represent about 65% of the cotton growing acres in the Texas high plains, and so that's an important designation when we try to look at the impact of soil health in these cotton cropping systems of our area. And why are we talking about cotton today so much? Well, the region that I just showed earlier represents about half of the US cotton crop annually, and so this is a significant region for growing cotton in the United States. We're going to look at 3 methods that come from that NRCS Soil Health Technical Note published in 2019 that was recommendations for soil health assessments in cropping systems. So particularly what I'm going to present today out of those assessments is soil organic carbon. This is an instrumental dry combustion, followed by permanganate oxidizable carbon, a reaction with dilute permanganate. And then finally, we're going to look at some carbon cycling potential, and this is done with a β-glucosidase activity, and that's a colorimetric determination following a substrate-induced incubation. So to begin with our results, we're going to talk about soil organic carbon first. All of our figures are going to look very similarly. So on the left is going to be our Amarillo series at that Ag Cares facility in Lamesa, Texas, and on our right is going to be the Pullman series at the Helms Farm in Halfway, Texas. On the y-axis, we have the profile soil organic carbon in megagrams per hectare. And then on the x-axis, we're going to have our different cropping systems. Remember, that's conventional tillage with a winter fallow in our continuous cropping system. On the left, in the middle, we have our cotton in 2020 and our wheat in 2021. That's that cotton wheat fallow rotation. And then finally, we have the continuous cotton with the cover crop on our right in each of these systems. For each site, we also had 2 irrigation levels plus that base irrigation. The base irrigation is about 60% evapotranspiration potential. And at one site, we have a little less irrigation capacity, which is that Amarillo series site at Ag Cares. And so it's only plus 33% base irrigation or minus 33. Whereas at halfway, we have a little bit more irrigation capacity, so it's 1.5 times that base irrigation or half times. So that essentially represents a high and a low irrigation as well. And then these are broken down into depths from 0 to 60, or I'm sorry, 0 to 90 centimeters below the soil surface. So what we see is similar trends for both of our sites with the amount of soil organic carbon at depth. But what's really interesting to note is just how much more soil organic carbon we have in that Pullman series that has a little bit less sand content than our Amarillo series. And we also see less distribution of that soil organic carbon within the profile differences, I should say, between the different cropping systems compared to that Amarillo series at the Ag Care site, where we start to see some breakdown between our treatments, where when we have that continuous cotton with the cover crop, we have an increased amount of soil organic carbon in those top layers compared to our conventional tillage system. We move on to permanganate oxidizable carbon. We see a very similar trend to what we saw in the soil organic carbon, except where at the Ag Care site, we have more POxC in the cotton wheat fallow rotation system compared to where we saw it in that conventional tilled system and the cover crop system. And why we think this is we just have more of that material that's cycling in this system that's available to those microbial populations to work with. One of the things that we're most excited to present is the relationship of POxC to SOC. We see a significantly strong relationship between those two measurements, but we also see an increased amount of POxC in that soil organic carbon fraction in La Mesa, Texas, about 5.1% compared to 3.5% at the halfway site. And one of the reasons why we think this is happening is that with lower soil organic carbon levels in our sandy soils, we're actually able to see the buildup of that soil organic carbon over time. These soils have about 0.4% organic matter. And so seeing changes is much more, it's much easier to see in a sandy soil compared to a heavier textured soil like a clay where you have more organic matter in that system. And so we're really excited to see these values and for us to keep exploring these over time. When we look at beta-glucosidase activity, we only examined it in the top 2 layers of the soil profiles, that 0 to 15 and the 15 to 30. And the real reason behind this is that we saw a significant decrease in the amount of beta-glucosidase activity within the profile. So we only decided to present the top 2 layers. We didn't see any differences in that Pullman series in halfway Texas, but in Ag Cares, we did start to see some distribution between those treatments, specifically where we had the cover crop at that lower irrigation rate being significantly greater than that continuous cotton winter fallow system. And why we think this is just that we have more organic material that the microbes are able to work with, increasing the microbial capacity to produce that beta-glucosidase enzyme to break down some of those carbon structures. So in summary, soil carbon stocks responded differently to agricultural management practices based on soil texture with our 3 different treatments that we looked at today. Specifically looking at the Pullman series, it had a greater capacity or greater soil organic carbon in a profile and generally increased carbon cycling potential compared to that Amarillo series. However, the Amarillo series had a greater proportion of that POxC in the SOC, which potentially indicates opportunities to investigate the storage mechanisms of the carbon fraction following agricultural management practices. And then finally, what we think is that greater consideration to regional calibrations of soil health indicators based on soil texture / type and cropping system might help maximize that adoption potential by our producers in the region, helping us to reduce our wind erosion potential here. So with that, I want to say thank you. Feel free to reach out via my email, joseph.burke@ag.tamu.edu. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding our soil health management practices here in the region, as well as our assessments looking at different soil types and textures. Thank you.